Branded still has high competitive success, and just because you're bad at the deck and you need a helmet ass deck that's just super OP and you can't win, then that's your fault. But to just hate on the deck, to say like, oh man, Brandon's not good enough. What do you mean it's not good enough? It is good enough. You're not good enough. If we're gonna be fair, most Yu-Gi-Oh players are kinda ass. As requested, the budget Branded Fusion deck profile 0.5 tier. Nah, it's ridiculous. It's not 0.5 tier. The deck is disgusting. It's very powerful. And if you're looking to ball on a budget, this comes out to about $100. So let's get into it. You get triple Branded Fusion. Make sure it's good in the shot. Yeah. The shot's good. Triple Branded Fusion. You know what this does. Your mom knows what this does. Your neighbor knows what this does. Moving on. Aluber, the Branded Fusion Searcher. 3 of them, no less. Branded opening. The Aluber opening, more like. Since you don't have Quem, obviously it's only summoning Aluber, right? Not to say cringe standard, but yeah, it's standard, right? And then Foolish Burial and Gold Sark. You want to run these. These are your hard starters. Once you get to this, a 1-card combo to FTK your opponent. And then Spriggan's Kit. We run this in the budget build. It's about 46 cards. You can cut it to 45. We'll talk about that later, but I think 46 is safe. And then these are the pseudo starters that can be starters in their own right, but they might need some other stuff with them. Fusion Deployment, Double Cartesia, Albion. Albion, the amount of times you draw into crazy Branded Fusion or something that you were missing is actually unbelievable. So I decided to qualify Albion as a starter because he is that dang good. But yeah, we'll just move right on. Nutty. And at the end, I might do combos if we have time. So I'll be pretty quick with the profile. A lot of this stuff is old, so it's pretty like self-explanatory why you run it. Now we get into engine / playthrough hand traps, right? So Ash is the bane of this deck. So you have to either have thrusts or cross-out designators to be able to play. But those are not for budget, right? You can't fit cross-outs and thrusts under this budget, so we have to pivot and make it a different way. So triple Nadir Servant. This lets you do essentially what thrust and crossout does for you, except for a lot cheaper, right? So that's what the goal is here with the budget profile. This is for someone that's trying to get into Branded, that just doesn't want to fork over the money for like $18 for a freaking Lulu Walilith, right? Dogmatica Maximus at 1, you need him, especially because you're not running Quem, so you can't. You know, the only legal targets would be Fallen of Albaz or Dogmatica Maximus. And you don't really want to search Albaz, it's not good. And then 2 more cards to play through Ash is the Fight for a Patchwork. You're able to hard draw into Albaz, which is, we'll talk about the numbers of Albaz that we run. But the Patchwork helps you play through Ashes and whatnot. Sometimes you can make something as simple as Aquarius, and then your opponent, it's very hard to out, right? If the Aquarius lowers attack points down, and then you know, how do you out that, right? You have to negate it, destroy it. The card summons Albaz or Aluber or whatever, right? And then it snowballs into there. So, and then Called by the Grave. So these are your cards that play through Ash. Speak of the Devil, He Shall Appear. Triple Ash Blossom, and then Triple Infinite Impermanence and Super Poly. These are self-explanatory. You need stuff to be able to stop your opponent from playing or break their board. If you don't, you're going to lose. So you run these 9. Now we get into the engine requirements. We run triple Albaz, right? Because Ash right now dunks on this deck so hard with crossouts, with Thrust not being available to us. You need to up the count of Albaz. It already is up in the normal build, but without Quem, you don't need 3. But if you want to play consistently through Ash, you need 3. So if you had crossouts to your name or thrusts, then you don't have to play 3 in this variant if you don't want to pick up all the cards like Quem and stuff. But in this build, the way I built it, you need triple Albaz because you want to hard open it so then you can still make your fusion plays with your Fight for Patchworks and Cartesias and whatnot. And then you run 4 branded spell traps, right? You run the Retribution. Sometimes it's just a nice card to set and becomes a negate, and then becomes follow-up. Branded Red is broken. You summon Chimera off of it. Spoiler alert, you do run Chimera. I would not advise running this deck without Chimera. Branded Lost and Branded High Spirits. Branded High Spirits is really nice off the Nadir Servant. and then these two, the Despian brothers, the generic, the discount Quem, and the what's tragedy? A Luber Searcher, basically, right? Despian a Luber Searcher, and then the one Mercurier, and then the two engine requirements for Pfeiffer Patchwork. You only run one of each because this deck does discard. You can discard with Lubellion. There is no point to run multiples because if you draw the Patchwork, sweet, you resolve it. If you draw Poly, sweet, you resolve it. If you draw a Gem Chain, you can use it for fusion material, or you can discard it to the graveyard. You can even shuffle it back to make the Pfeiffer Patchwork live, so all of it works. The only hard brick is the Poly, and even Poly is not a brick because you can still make plays. And so that's all of the main deck stuff. 46 cards. You can try to cut one Albaz, I would not. And then we go into the extra deck. Double Mirrojade, double Albion, Lubellion, Titaniclad, Sprint, Brigand. These are all the names. We cut Rimbrum because too much money. If you wanted to keep this as budget as possible, right? If you have Rimbrum, run them. But we had to make certain concessions if we wanted to get it right around that $100. And so this is the guys we run. Mirrojade, Albion, and the Lubellion. This 5-card lineup is pretty standard. You have to run that, no doubt. Titaniclad, you run because he can, in end phase, summon Fallen of Albaz. He can search you Fallen of Albaz. He can summon Maximus possibly, which doesn't really come up, but it could, especially in your opponent's end phase for you to like follow up. But mostly what it's there for is it's a big dude, it's unaffected, so you can run stuff over, and it fuses with your opponent's big monsters. Sprint also is a really good fusion target, but you run it because through the Branded High Spirits Nadir play, you can special summon Kit to get Branded High Spirits, Pitch, get Albaz, all that stuff, and then you can make Mirrojade even if you get Ashed, which is pretty nice. And then Brigand, the Glory Dragon, you run that because it basically helps you go infinite off Nadir Servant. Then you run the triplets, Despian Queritus, Gurang Gugnol, and Masquerade. Yes, Masquerade's back in the main, which is pretty cool. That's why it's kind of cool to run the budget build, because a lot of times you can make a board of Mirrojade, Masquerade, and whatever else Branded Red set and set up. And the Masquerade is just annoying enough that they'll target the Masquerade before they even target the Mirrojade, which is funny. And then the generic fusion targets, you have to run Guardian Chimera because otherwise Branded Red is absolutely pointless. You can make like Masquerade with it, but it doesn't really do anything. Chimera's key, you need it. Garura is for the Super Poly. You want to be able to break your opponent's boards. It's your send off of Nadir Servant along with Bucephalus. This helps you dodge Bestials on the Nadir Servant. So yeah, this is pretty much, I think, perfect for the budget build because this deck, the extra deck and the main deck flow into each other. You have to be able to make sense of every card decision that you have in the extra deck. Otherwise, you can't just throw random stuff in like, oh yeah, I got my Link deck where I make a few Link monsters and I run access code for the OTK. No, like this is legit. You have to think through every single card, or else you're screwed. But let's get into some combos, some test hands actually, right? So, want to shuffle this real nice. Branded Fusion, budget version. All the ladies love Mirrojade. They actually love Albaz's feet. Albaz's feet are the best thing about that card, huh? Rex Ryan style. Draw 1, 2. Oh my goodness, this is so broken. Okay, maybe I didn't shuffle that great, but I did pile shuffle and shuffle for a really long time. So, yeah, I mean, this hand is really nutty, right? First thing we would do here is, I think the best move is the Gold Sark, right? So we Gold Sark, activate, look through the deck, banish Tragedy. Let's see what this is. Let's put that there. Banish Tragedy. Gold Sark, go to grave, add a Luber to hand. We'll put the deck over here. And then now we've sort of played into Droll because we wanted to go for the Luber, but we already had the Brand of Fusion, so it didn't really matter if we played into Droll because we got our search. And if, let's say, they do Droll you, you just keep the Aluber for follow-up, and Branded Fusion can be just activated straight up. But we're going under the assumption that Droll has not been activated. This is especially game 1. You would play, you know, game 1, 2, 3 differently. And then we do Patchwork. So it's pretty nice, man. I love the Pfeiffer Patchwork engine. It's the worst thing that we took it out of the deck. This deck already has way too many cards. Now we'll normal Aluber. Search. This is where like cards like the field spell come in clutch, where like you could search the field spell because you already have Branded Fusion, and if you had stuff like Lubellion, you could already, you know, get the Lost, so you would search. You want a third target to search, especially because the Branded Red will be set off Albion. So activate Branded Lost, activate Branded Fusion. So we'll send the Albaz, and we'll send the... We already sent the Tragedy, so I'm thinking we just sent Cartesia for our guy. So yeah, we'll send the Cartesia, because we have the Poly, which is a really good card for this build. It helps you fuse away Albion. You can make Predaplant Chimera... No, Dragostapelia. What the hell am I talking about? You can make Dragostapelia with this, because the Dark Fusion, and then that'll help trigger the effect. And now on summon Chainlink 1 Albion, Chainlink 2 Branded Lost. Yeah, I think Spriggan's Kit's the best because we already have the Mercuriers, so search that, and then Albion effect to Fusion Summon. So we'll banish the Albaz. And I'd really like to keep the Aluber. Let's just banish the Edge of Chain. And then we'll make, what am I doing? Touching the deck, bro. Then we'll make Lubellion. Lubellion effect, discard the Branded Opening, shuffle back Albaz, and itself to make Jade. And obviously, like, the budget build does play a little bit more into like things like Nibiru, but overall, I mean, you can't have everything, right? Except Tier 0 best branded build, then it does have everything, right? So now we've got all of this set up. So if we had just actually probably fusing Kit away, keep Edge of Chain, fuse with Edge of Chain, add the Pfeiffer Patchwork, yeah, that would probably been a little better. But still, at the end of the day, it still works. It gets us there. Then we'll activate Polymerization to fuse Aluber and Albion, because you can make, your options are pretty endless. You could make Quertus, Masquerade, or Dragostapelia here. I think Masquerade is solid. I would not make Quertus because this card's better for breaking boards. So it would be between these two. So then it would be kind of like up to you in this situation. It depends on what you're playing against, right? So Masquerade's really good against decks that are just like effect. Like they need to deal with this or they lose. And try to summon all your stuff in defense mode. Unless it has really low defense. Like this one I would consider possibly attack mode because you want to play around Lightning Storm. It actually is sided for some reason. So this would be really powerful for, you know, lots of effects. But this would be powerful for like targeted hate, right? So if I honestly think Dragostapelia is here the better choice. But it's either way. You really can't go wrong. So what you'll end with, you'll go to end phase, and then you'll resolve first you want to resolve the Albion, because if they haven't bestialed you or DD crowed you, you get, as turn player, you get priority to activate your effect, and so they can't just wait till end phase, they have to do it earlier. So you could set Branded Retribution, which isn't bad, because once Mirrojade sends another card, and then banishes your opponent's card, you can negate something with this, shuffle back the 2 Albions from your graveyard to recycle your engine, and then on next turn you could use this to bring back Branded Fusion to hand. So Branded Retribution is actually very strong here, but Branded Red is the most powerful play. So if your opponent runs a lot high Bestial count, or this is like post game 1, I would consider not playing into the Bestials with Branded Red. But currently, if we're talking about game 1, you have Branded Red set, and so the board kind of comes out to this, and then Blazing Cartesia comes back to hand, right? So now your opponent goes. You have a banish, a negate, another negate in hand, a Branded in red, which will target the Aluber, bring it back to hand, and then you can fusion with whatever effect you don't need, right? Like if you've already spent this and the monster's been removed, it has no threat of like the effect activating, you can do that. You can do mirrojade, it really doesn't matter. Mirrojade, you could just summon another one. So keeping him on field isn't as important. If we didn't have to do the gold sark route, we could have just added ad libitum. So there's different lines you could take. This deck has so many lines, that's why it's very hard to play, and it takes a long time to master. I've been playing it for a long time, and still I make misplays. So it's not the deck, it's my fault. So you add a luber, and let's say we banish, let's do the Spriggan's Kit, because you want Cartesia for follow-up. So we'll do, I guess I could keep the Aluber. Yeah, if you haven't spent the Mercurier, but let's say you did, right? Because the Mercurier would be spent for sure, and then you'd have these three, fuse them away to make Guardian Chimera. This is very like old school combos, because that's what happens when you go budget route, right? Like you go back to the older builds. You summon Guardian Chimera, and then you trigger off the Guardian Chimera. Because you have Poly in graveyard, your Guardian Chimera can't be targeted by Valor and Imperm, so it becomes a way more destructive, way more powerful card. So you do Chainlink 1, Chainlink 2, plus they can't respond anyway because Branded lost. So for this, we'll search follow-up. You can search Albaz, you can search Cartesia. I like to do Albion because it helps you set up Grave and draw a card. And then after that, draw 2 and pop 1 card. So now you've got 5 cards waiting for follow-up. If your opponent, this is going to be very hard for your opponent to out with the targeting protection. This gets outed, they lose their field, right? And then you still have, keep in mind, you have the Branded Opening in Grave, which will protect your monsters from destruction. And when Mirrojade interrupts, you're going to have a another Albion to be able to get another card, such as Branded Fusion. So this is kind of what you're trying to set up every turn. It takes a little bit more thought than the more expensive version, because the more expensive version obviously runs things like Quem, Lubellion, and stuff like that. So Lubellion, you could just send it, and then very easy to get Albion triggered off into the graveyard. But sometimes here, if you can't trigger off Albion, you don't want to just summon it and it'd be on the field pointlessly. What you want to do is possibly make Lubellion and make the Mirrojade play, and then if you draw things like Cartesia, use the Cartesia to send the Albion. So it's just a different play string, right? Play line, I guess. But yeah, that's it. This is just a kind of an example. We could do more, but it's kind of just more of the same, right? Like if we do another 5 cards, and this is like already stuff's like been removed from the deck, but right. With this hand, you kind of understand what you're doing, right? Will you die to Ash? Possibly, right? If you lead with a Luber, you set, let's say they Ash you have Super Poly set and Branded Opening. So you have follow-up and Super Poly. So yeah, this hand does lose to Ash, but sometimes that's what happens with this deck, right? Just like a lot of decks lose to Droll and whatnot. So, yeah, guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this budget branded deck profile. I hope this helps people that are trying to play with a little bit more more economical, like cost understanding gameplay. Like you're not trying to just blow a bunch of money on like a really expensive deck. And what you can do, what I showed you here is possibly a starting route. You can pick up all these cards, and then all the other stuff will probably be reprinted in the next Megatins or whatnot. So you can get it then, right? Like Lulu, Albion, the Sanctifier Dragon, things like that. Like most of these cards like will be reprinted in the next, except maybe Dragoon, right? And Mud Dragon's pretty cheap, like that would be in the side. But like these cards will be reprinted, and then you'll have the great basis. Quem will be reprinted, all that stuff, and then you'll have like full power Branded in the summer, right? Now, like, will Branded be the best deck? Who knows? Maybe Branded Fusion gets hit. Sadly, I hope not, right? Let's hope not. But I genuinely think that this deck is nice. It just requires a good pilot. So don't blame the deck. Don't say mid deck, mid this, mid that. Branded, it's been brought to my attention in the comments, has the second most tops this year after tearlaments, right? So that's a great, like, that's crazy for a deck that's come out so long ago. Branded still has high competitive success, and just because you're bad at the deck and you need a helmet ass deck that's just super OP and you can't win, then that's your fault. But to just hate on the deck, to say like, oh man, Brandon's not good enough. What do you mean it's not good enough? It is good enough. You're not good enough. If we're gonna be fair, most Yu-Gi-Oh players are kind of ass. So that's my spiel on the Brandon hate. Thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you guys enjoyed this profile, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.